Some men don't walk in expecting salutes because what they carry is heavier than a gesture. Most just don't see it until something explodes. It was a gray morning and Camp Delta lay under a thick blanket of fog. The guards had just rotated shifts. The training ground was still, but something about the air felt tense, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Young soldiers prepared for their muddy drills. New lieutenants barked orders, clipboards in hand, each trying to prove their authority. Among them was one man no one saluted, Frank Delaney, 68 years old, hair white as snow, and the only one not in uniform. His faded olive jacket had frayed shoulders. One pant leg dragged slightly, an old injury announcing itself with every step. He held a thermos and watched quietly, never interfering. Most knew him only as the consultant the colonel dragged in. Or rather, they didn't know him at all. Colonel Hartley, meanwhile, sat in the Central Command building sipping his coffee, rigid, proud, and overly confident in his young officers. He had often been heard saying, "Frank's just a relic, symbolic, harmless." But that morning, a report from the armory landed in Frank's hands. One of the training mock bombs, Model 113A, was listed incorrectly. It wasn't deactivated. And from what Frank read, it might still have a live trigger. His eyes narrowed. He recognized the pattern, an outdated wiring system he had seen before. Without wasting time, he walked into the colonel's office. Calm voice, steady hands. "That 113A device may be hot. Red pin's missing. It's not a mock-up." The colonel glanced at the report, took a sip from his mug, and chuckled. "Frank, details like that mattered in your day. These kids know more than your old Vietnam tales ever taught." Frank didn't reply. He simply placed the file on the desk and turned to leave. But before stepping out, he looked back and said, "When one screw's missing, a true mechanic stops the whole engine. But you keep running it." Then he walked out. But where? Toward the training field. Some heroes don't shout. They just kneel and save lives. As Frank moved through the field, no one really noticed. Most soldiers were adjusting gear or syncing up their comms. One young soldier knelt by a shallow pit, examining a training device under the eye of his instructor. Frank approached. His gaze immediately locked into the device. A thin copper wire, wrongly looped, color coding mismatched. The wiring sequence wasn't regulation, it was combat-era design. He'd seen it in Somalia, 1993. Pulling the wrong wire would arm the bomb in 3 seconds. The soldier looked up. "Sir, can I help you?" Frank nodded slightly, then crouched beside him. He pulled out a scratched pair of pliers from his jacket and a small notebook, handwritten notes from decades of fieldwork. Every line a near-death memory. "Name, son." "Derek, sir." "You know what kind of setup this is?" "No, sir. It was issued this morning." Frank didn't speak. He studied the wires for a beat, then quietly said, "Step back." Derek hesitated, but something in Frank's eyes made it feel like an order. He stepped away. Frank reached into his kit, took out a small hook tool. He examined the leads, waited. A breath, a prayer, a decision. Not red, always blue. He pulled the wire. Nothing happened. But everything changed. He turned. 15 soldiers had gathered in silence. Even Colonel Hartley stood at the back, arms crossed, saying nothing this time. Frank rose, reached into his pocket, and handed Derek an old, worn pin. "This medal didn't save a life, but maybe your hesitation just earned one." He turned to the colonel. "Not everything is procedure. Sometimes it's just about having the right eyes." That day, Frank became visible again, but no one saluted him. They simply stood still with respect.